Hi guys, today's lesson is about scientific notation, and you need to know how to switch between scientific notation and standard notation and write the answers properly in scientific notation. So before you can do this, you really need to understand what scientific notation looks like. When we have very large or small numbers, we need to write them in scientific notation. Scientific notation numbers come in two parts. The first part is known as the factor, and it's a number between 1 and 10. It cannot be less than 1, and it cannot be more than 10. The second part of the number is always going to be a power of 10 with either a positive or a negative exponent. If it's a large number, you will have a positive exponent. If it's a small number, then you will have a negative exponent. So I'm going to put up a series of numbers and I want you to see if you can tell whether it's scientific notation or not. So here's the first one. Do you think this is scientific notation? And the answer is no, because the factor is more than 10. The second one, is this scientific notation? And the answer is no, because it's missing a factor. The factor in this case is simply just 1. In the third one, also, this is not scientific notation because this factor is less than 1. So here are some simple numbers that you're probably used to seeing. If this is in scientific notation, then to put it in standard notation, all you have to do is multiply it out by 10 to the second, which is 100. So the standard notation is 123. On the other hand, if it's 1.23 times 10 to the negative second, this time you have to actually divide the number by 10 to the second. So the decimal will shift to the left, making the number a smaller number. It'll shift 2 places to the left. You need to know how to multiply standard scientific notation numbers. So here we have two scientific notation numbers. You're going to multiply factor times factor and the power of 10 times the power of 10, and then make sure your answer is finally written in scientific notation. So I'm going to take my two factors and multiply them together, and take my powers of 10 and multiply them together. If you do 5 times 2, 9, you're going to get 14.5, and 10 to the negative 8th times 10 to the second is 10 to the negative 6th. It turns out that 14.5 is not acceptable because our factor has to be between 1 and 10. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 14.5 and change it into 1.45 times 10. And we already have times 10 to this negative 6th. So now our factor is going to be 1.45, and we're going to combine the two powers of 10 to make it 10 to the power of negative fifth. And that is your final answer in scientific notation. Division is done in a similar way. You are going to divide the factor by factor and divide the power of 10 by the power of 10. So when we do the division of the factors, we get 0.245. And when we do division of the factors of 10, we get 10 to the fourth. Now, this first part is not a good factor because our factor has to be between 1 and 10. So we're going to simplify it to 2.45 times 10 to the negative first. If we multiply these two numbers, we'll get 0.245. Don't forget, we already have 10 to the fourth. That means we're going to leave our first factor as 2.45 and combine the two factors of 10. So it's 10 to the third, or 2,450. This is a little tricky, but you'll get used to it the more you practice. So why don't you try practicing these two numbers? You may want to pause the video and see where it takes you. I'm now going to reveal the answers. We have 6.52 times 10 to the first and times 10 to the third, and you're going to combine the powers of 10, and that is your properly written scientific notation number. And we're going to multiply the factors, which will give us 21.3, multiply the powers of 10, which will give us 10 to the seventh. But the first factor is not the correct factor. We need to change it. So it becomes 2.173 times 10 to the first. I think I am missing something. There we go. And we're going to combine the powers of 10, and it's 10 to the eighth. You may want to rewatch this so you understand it better. And here's a challenge question. Factor times factor, power of 10 times power of 10. We get 18.8 times 10 to the power of negative 8. But 18.8 is not a good factor, so we're going to change it to 1.88 times 10 to the negative times 10 to the first. And then we already have 10 to the negative eighth, which combines us to give us 1.88 times 10 to the negative seventh. Here's another one for you to try. The factors will divide to give us 0.6 times 10 to the 10th, negative 10th. But 0.6 is not a good factor, so we need to change that to 6 times 10 to the negative first times 10 to the negative 10th, which simplifies to 6 times 10 to the negative 11th. And this is our last one. You want to give it a try. I'm going to reveal the answer, and I'll see you in class. Goodbye.